Hello and welcome to Noble Mind.
Noble Mind is a podcast exploring mindfulness, meditation, and psychology.
Hello, Noble Mind listeners. Alex and I are very excited to let you know that we have a Noble Mind community launching on Facebook in February. So if you are a fan of the show, we would love to have you join us. To get the news on when the group opens and stay up to date on other happenings as well, be sure to join our email list at noblemindpodcast.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
In this episode, we speak to Belinda Siew Luan Khong about her work integrating existential and Buddhist psychology. She shares examples from her own clinical work and discusses her ideas for new ways of thinking about and teaching mindfulness. Dr. Khong practiced as an attorney before moving into psychology. She holds a doctorate in psychology from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. She's a practicing psychologist and served as co-editor of a recent double issue of the Humanistic Psychologist entitled Revisiting and Re-envisioning Mindfulness, Buddhist and Contemporary Perspectives. Dr. Khong conducts talks and workshops on psychotherapy, meditation, and mindfulness worldwide. We hope you enjoy the show.
So we are here with Belinda Siew Luan Khong. Welcome to Noble Mind. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And maybe we could just get ourselves started off by having you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, there's not much to tell. I practiced as an attorney for many, many years before I moved into psychology. When I moved back to Australia in 1989, I pursued a PhD in psychology at Macquarie University in Sydney. And my PhD dissertation looked at the role of responsibility in Buddhist psychology, Heidegger's philosophy, and Daseinsanalysis, which is existential therapy. So it's cross-discipline and cross-departmental, I guess. And it was actually, my supervisor said to me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because I had to learn Pali, I had to learn German, and I interviewed a lot of, so it was a theoretical thesis, not an experiment. So I interviewed a lot of Buddhist scholars, I interviewed a lot of Heideggerian scholars, I practically went around the world to do this. So my PhD, although it was theoretical, is very grounded in the practice, in the contrasting practice of the two worlds. And also, especially with Heidegger, as you know, Heidegger is very well known, in the promotion of existential therapy in the West. But not many people knew that he was actually a closet Buddhist. Mm-hmm. Seriously. Yeah. And a lot of his ideas came from the Buddha.
Is that right?
Yeah. And in fact, his first book called Being and Time, his Magnus Opus, he was actually already writing with the Japanese philosophers on this thing way back in 1917. Right? So Being and Time is very influenced by the Buddhist ideas. So my PhD looked at the contrast, the similarities, and how we can actually integrate all of that into existential therapy. Okay. But basically, I come from a Buddhist family in Malaysia where I was born. I would call myself a Sunday school Buddhist, meaning I just followed my parents. They say, go to temple, say hello to Pante and this and that, make donation, make dana and all that kind of thing. But without really understanding the deeper meanings of the Buddhist psychology, the Buddha's teaching, until I did my PhD. Right? So that's why I call myself a Sunday school Buddhist. Mom said, go and you go, right? Then after that, I practiced as a psychotherapist and a psychologist for 20 years. And my work basically integrates Eastern and Western psychotherapy, right? Including meditation and mindfulness. And I also incorporate humanistic and existential therapy in my therapeutic approach. That's why I think the article that I wrote called Being a Therapist, it integrates all that approaches. I also lectured at Macquarie University in Sydney. And then I conduct training workshops for individuals, professionals, medical doctors, in Australia and worldwide. And then finally, I supervise PhD candidates in their research, especially mindfulness, and I supervise psychologists in Australia. So I'm a bit of a jack of all trades.
And quite recently, and what inspired us to have you on the show was your co-editing of issue of the Humanistic Psychologist on this exploration of mindfulness and psychotherapy and new directions.
Could you introduce us to the debate, the concerns concerning secular mindfulness and Buddhist teachings, the Dharma?
My goodness, how many hours do you have? All right, let me try and put it in a little nutshell, which is a bit difficult, to be fair to the Buddhist tradition and also the contemporary setting where many people are doing good work, But the whole issue was not about criticizing what's been done. It's actually, like you said, and you put it very nicely, Alex, to give it new directions. So in fact, when I was invited to guest edit this special issue, and I asked for a double issue. That's the first time APA had ever done a double issue. There's 210 pages.
Impressive.
Right. Yeah, because I said, I don't want to look at research and studies because it's been done a lot. I wanted to look at the conceptual, the philosophical underpinnings of all these ideas, right? And to see the similarities and the differences in the practice. So some of the main themes that I find where the debate centers around, as you said, the first one is the need for the Buddha's teaching, the Dharma, to be included more explicitly in the current application and use of mindfulness. Then the second main theme that we found was the differences in the understanding of the term mindfulness in both settings. And the third debate centers around the training of mindfulness teachers, facilitators, and therapists. Right? So these are the main themes. I think my own thinking on this is that there is a lot of misconception about the Dharma as mainly a religious path, as opposed to a spiritual path, a way of living, or for human flourishing. Right? So a lot of practitioners and facilitators sometimes unusually wary of using the word Dharma in their practice in what they do. Like Pandey Teja Dharma, one of our contributors, and who wrote a beautiful article called Selling Water by the River. Right? He explains this quite well, and I will quote him because he puts it beautifully. He says, there is a general, though not universal, and occasionally a reticent acknowledgement of its Buddhist teachings. Of course, he's referring to mindfulness practice. Additionally, there is also a strange dualism within the realm of mindfulness teaching. Some facilitators present mindfulness as having no connection at all with the Buddhist origins or teachings, while others, depending upon the audience being addressed, play a game which Teja would call Buddhism, no Buddhism. And he said, in his view, there is in this approach not a little deception or dishonesty on the part of the presenter. On the one hand, claiming Buddhist authority for the teaching and practice, while on the other, seeking to divorce entirely the practice from its origins, and Apante said, and he would suggest its original purposes. And I think that really captures very well the debate and the differences in the current application and in the traditional practice. Now, so there's this issue about, how much to put in, how much to take out, how much to not even talk about it. And I do understand as a therapist myself, and I run a lot of workshops for people other than Buddhist practitioners, right? There is a concern about that. But as I would show later, there's always ways to actually do this, right? Without even having to use the word Buddha or Dharma. And this depends on the second thing which I am concerned about, is that the facilitators and the therapists or whoever, they need a thorough training in the grounding of the Buddha's teachings so that they know what to incorporate and what not to incorporate. They also need to have a personal practice. And they need to actually attend more than a weekend workshop and call themselves a mindfulness teacher. So I think that the idea, the debate itself, I think, is probably a non-event if people are actually grounded in the practice and they understand the differences and the similarities. So then there's also this concern about, the word using Dharma in writings and all that. And many of the Westerners especially, they tend not to refer at all in their writings many, many decades ago to the fact that this is the Dharma. Now, I can understand that 30 years ago. I think I am less sure about this reticence now, because I think that the explanations and the teachings and the practice which help people not only to understand mental health issues, but to understand the meaning of life, the purpose of life, which a lot of my clients are now encountering in the pandemic, right? This about impermanence and change. These are integral to the Buddha's teachings, and may I suggest also unique to the Buddha's teaching. So if what we do, there is a rationale for it in the Dharma, why don't we acknowledge the source of it, right? It's almost like the Dharma becomes a bad word, the Buddha becomes a bad word. And I often suggest, that the people who present this without identifying, this, they need to question their own motivation. Why? Right? And it's skillful to tailor or customize it to the audience. But you can do it in such a way that you actually can bring these things out without seeming to be, preaching or indoctrinating people. Okay. Also, I think, and I see this a lot, people are now beginning to want to learn and follow a spiritual path. They are not just happy with reducing their depression, anxiety, and things like that, right? People want to know, especially now when they see that life becomes so easy to be lost to the world, right? You can be healthy, next day you get COVID, and then you go to hospital. It is very scary for people to think, why am I here? Where am I going? What legacy am I leaving behind? That is a spiritual, existential question that the world is facing, right? And I think that books and writings on this kind of things are becoming very popular. For example, the book Think Like a Monk is the bestseller on the New York Times for the last 3 years. Now, can you imagine 30 years ago if they have the book with the word monk in there? It wouldn't sell. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that the teachers, the facilitators, and the authors actually haven't caught up with the sentiments of the community, right? So when they understand that this is what the community is needing, I think the debate will become a non-issue. Does that make sense?
It does. It brings up a kind of a concern about cultural appropriation for people who are maybe not Buddhist, like personally, maybe involved in mindfulness broadly, maybe therapists who haven't studied a lot of Buddhism, whoever it might be, but sort of teaching and wanting on the one hand to give appropriate sourcing of what you're teaching. If it comes out of Buddhism, it's worth saying that. On the other hand, if you don't know a lot about Buddhism or just kind of participating in the way in which that Buddhism is kind of like idealized or mystified or, kind of appropriated in a way.
Yes, I think that's a very good question. And I think I discussed this with Pante as well in the other talk, right? And I said that's where the training and the grounding of the person who delivers it is very important. Let me give you an example. I see a lot of clients with terminal illnesses, a lot of doctors send them to me. They got sometimes chronic fatigue, all kinds of medical issues. I had one particular client who was diagnosed with cancer. And she came to me to deal with her stress. She's waiting for the test results, right? So she wanted to learn meditation in order to manage. The doctors always send them to me while they're doing their medical treatment to reduce their stress and improve their immunity. So I did that sitting meditation with her half an hour. And then I asked her to give a number to her level of stress out of 10. She said 3. And I asked her, do you have any internal dialogue? And she says no. So I said, okay, I'd like you to put internal dialogue into your head, which is what she came to see me for. Like, what if the test is negative? What about my children? I'm too young to die. And all the things that she came to therapy for. So she did. And then I said, so what level of stress are you experiencing now? It went to 9 out of 10. So I asked her what happened. I said, you haven't moved out of your chair. You haven't got your test result. Nothing has changed. Why has it gone from 3 to 9? And then the penny dropped. She says, it's my mind, Belinda. Right? And she says, my mind is causing my suffering. I said, that's right. She said, where does that come from? I said, this is what the Buddha teaches, that the mind is the creator of our suffering and is also the pathway out of our suffering. So I think that nothing has changed except your mind, right? So the change is within yourself, right? And then I talk about impermanence, and I said, if you let it be, right, you'll find that there are more ideas that come on, more dialogue. And if you don't get attached to it, you create more stress and all that. And she was fascinated. She's a doctor. And she says, Belinda, I want to know more. Who is this about? What is this about? And I said, actually, this is the Dharma. So that's why I'm saying that the therapists themselves must find skillful ways of introducing, right? And if you make it experiential for the client, you can tell them it comes from the devil, they don't care. Because she's got the insight that she is actually, like the Buddha said, she is the cause of her own suffering. Yeah, so that's why I'm very, very concerned about therapists and all that, learning about the Dharma, not for them to go and become preachers and all that. They learn it so they know how to use it. Mm-hmm. Because little knowledge is very dangerous, but full knowledge gives you wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it feels a little bit easier when I think about having a more intimate personal exchange and being able to, as you're saying, describe it in a way that's going to work for that individual in a very sort of personalized way. It's a little bit harder when I think about addressing groups.
I've been invited to train a lot of doctors by the Ministry of Health. I also train bankers and, non-medical medical issue. Now, I remember being invited to run a workshop for a group of doctors. And this is at a conference where they all have to go and get CPD points, right? So most of them don't want to be there. Okay. So when I started, I said to them, I'd like you to be able, while you're listening to me, to be aware of the internal dialogue in your mind, right? Just be aware of that. And I said, a lot of you will be thinking, I like that, I don't like that, I don't agree with that. Oh, I need to remember this, I need to write this down, and I want to use this. And one of the doctors stand up and said to me, Belinda, are you also a mind reader? And I said, no, because 99.9% of our time, our mind is ruminating. We're not there. And I bet you will lose half of what I say because you'll be into your mind. Now, this is about centering your mind without bringing it in, right? And then later on, they come back after lunch. And it's very hard to talk to a group, especially doctors, after lunch, right? And you can see that they're all drowsy and they all just want to sign off, get their CPD points and go back. So I have to think of a way to actually then, challenge them and all that. So I said to them, docs, I have a problem, a medical problem, and there is no cure, and the prognosis is very bad. And they all said, oh dear, no, tell us, that's all, we got surgeons and all this, professors, surely there must be a cure. Just give us the symptoms. I said, no, definitely there's no. So I managed to wake them up from their lunch sleep, right? And then I said, so what the diagnosis that they gave me is I am human and that I will die. And they go, whoops, right? They said, really? I said, yes. As medical professionals, we never think about impermanence, of change, of us actually being here and not here. Now, all these are the Buddhist concepts of impermanence, of change, of living, of rumination. They didn't use a word, but I captured it. And later on, the most interesting thing was after the conference, one of the doctors said to me, Belinda, will you come and teach my department? Right? So the challenge is not the group or the size of the group, Kate. The challenge is in the facilitator understanding the group and how to skillfully use the concepts, right, to bring it experientially to the people first.
So I'll jump ahead to our next question, maybe. So we have talked on this podcast about a lot of different mindfulness-based therapies. We've had people who've developed various interventions come on and talk to us. So we thought it would be nice to hear some of your own thinking around some of the limitations of mindfulness-based interventions or mindfulness research more broadly.
Now, I think the main thing to understand is that although Buddhism and psychotherapy has a common aim in reducing suffering, the Buddha's teachings are focused on freedom from existential suffering, whereas psychotherapy is more based on the relief from symptoms of the suffering, like depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. So this difference has actually given rise to a lot of misconception. And for example, one of the misconceptions, and this is my bugbear, right? Every time I get an opportunity, I talk about it. The use of the word mindfulness-based intervention. Nowadays, because every time I get a chance, I've been saying this, people are using more the word mindfulness-based approach. So mindfulness-based intervention, MBI, right, versus mindfulness-based approaches, MBA, right? Now, you may ask, is the difference between MBI and MBA semantics? My simple answer is no. The synonyms for intervention is intrude, intercede, right? And interfere, all involving the idea of something or somebody acting on behalf of somebody or putting it back for them to take over, right? That's what intervention means according to the dictionary. Now, approach has the meaning of pathway, passage, finding, involving the idea of making way for, of letting be. Now, this is more consistent with the Buddha's teachings of meditation and mindfulness of non-striving, non-doing, letting go, and letting be, right? So I always say to people, the Buddha teaches in the Eightfold Path, right speech, right action, and right thoughts and all that. And I would suggest it includes right terminology, right? You go and say MBI, and a lot of colleagues say, oh, but we don't interfere. We don't intervene. What do you think you're using the word intervention for? Right? Then find another way. So I'm very glad to see that more and more people are using mindfulness approaches. To give you a sense of why this is important is that if you are intervening as opposed to facilitating, right, people have to understand, and this is where the grounding is important, the training is important. You have to understand when, who, and with what population you apply the therapy with, right? For example, in my work, I see clients with a range of problems, ranging from depression, anxiety, stress, and all that, to psychopathology, schizophrenia, paranoia, and all that. Now, with my clients who experience significant psychopathology, I would never allow them to do concentration meditation, where they're watching their breath, because it is very hard for them to differentiate the mind states that they get from deep samadhi, deep concentration, from the mind states of being paranoid, right? So I would encourage them in this case to just do mindful activity like cleaning the pond, walking the dog, taking a swim, planting, arranging flowers, all those type of things that actually calm their mind down. Because here, with this range of clients, we're not looking for transformation. We're looking at symptom reduction, right? So I'm not against symptom reduction. I am very much concerned about therapists not knowing certain clients you cannot use certain measures, right? So I would never also allow my clients to go on long retreat if they don't have a personal retreat or have proficiency in their practice. I never allow them to learn from books, apps, digital media. I know I'm probably one of those old dinosaur icons, right? I call my clients very often and I process with them the effects of what they're learning from meditation. Right? And finally, and this my people are very shocked, I teach my clients meditation on the promise they would never teach somebody else without taking them to a teacher or without them actually going to a class, that they are not equipped to teach somebody else, no matter how beneficial they find it.
Now, we know you have a rich selection of vignettes that you draw from. I wonder if you can give some examples.
Okay, so let me give you this beautiful vignette, which I loved. And I'll just give her the pseudonym Therese. All my clients, they are very lovely. They all consent for me to share the stories. But I thought just to cover their privacy, So this is Therese. And she was 33 years old when she first came to see me. She's been diagnosed with 3 cancers, a brain tumor, breast cancer, and stomach. She was given 18 months to live, right? And so she was very stressed naturally, and she wanted to learn meditation to manage her stress, also to improve her immunity because she was receiving very heavy chemotherapy. So the first thing she asked me, Therese, was a question from her priest. She's a devout Catholic. She said her priest said, and this has to do with using Dharma, with people from different affiliation and all that. So she said her priest said and warned her against doing meditation, a Buddhist meditation, because when her mind is empty, the devil will get in. Right? This is her priest warning her. So Therese asked me what I think. And I said to her, there's so much junk in our mind that there will be no shelf space for the devil to purge. Right. So yeah. So I use a lot of humor when people, but I'm very mindful of her concern. And then I wrote a letter of guarantee on my letterhead to the priest. I said, to whom it may concern, this is to guarantee and assure you that there are no side effects, physical, medical, or spiritual, to Therese learning Buddhist meditation from me. Signed, Dr. Belinda Khong. Right. So Therese was assured. Right. And we did a therapy. I think this is reported in my article called Expanding the Understanding of Mindfulness, Seeing the Trees and Forests. Now, when I first saw Therese, I was really shocked at her appearance. She had beautiful auburn hair. She's very proud, right? When she came that day, she had no hair to speak of. Yeah, it's all fallen, right? And she said to me, I am only 33. Damn it. I am too young to die. I'm angry that I have this illness. I'm frightened of the changes happening to my body. I hate losing my hair. I worry about Tom and the children being on their own when I die. I'm finding it hard to let go of the constant chatter going through my head. I need to find a way to prevent these thoughts from spiraling into depression. I'm so afraid, Belinda. I think that meditation can help me to cope with these thoughts and feelings. So I encourage her to do tranquility meditation to reduce the rumination. And I give her very basic ones like just, counting the breath or whatever. But I'm also mindful that she's a Catholic. Her priest has got concern. So I give her mindfulness practice that doesn't give her a conflict with any of the things she knows the background. So I introduce her to a way of being mindful through nature, okay? And through exercise that she can get insight for herself. So because she's losing her hair, it also happens to be winter. I said to her, when she's sad about losing her hair, I like her to sit out in the garden and watch the trees. And I want her to find me 2 clouds that are the same, right? So that's all the exercise I gave her. Now, her encounter with impermanence was really moving and very profound. She said to me, and this is so interesting, it was such a powerful experience. I noticed that the clouds were continually evolving. You asked me to look for 2 clouds that remained the same at any one moment. I could not find any. I also noticed the tree shading its leaves spontaneously. I realize now that change is natural and inevitable. It happens to everything and everyone. As I sat and watched these changes in nature, I realized that I was slowly losing the fear of the change taking place without me, especially my fear of dying. I was surprised to find there was no thoughts except the resolve to be around next year when the tree regains its leaf and me, my falling hair. Isn't that beautiful? Right? Amazing. So the other thing that she found was difficult was with chemotherapy sessions. She has to go, I don't know whether you know of people who've been in chemotherapy. They lie naked, almost naked on a cold slab with a strong X-ray. She hated that, and she wasn't getting the maximum benefit from that. So I said to her, before she go into chemotherapy, I did a CD tape with my voice guiding her through meditation, right? And also before she go and get results from her doctor to do meditation, because she was always fearful of the test, right? So she would do that. So she would meditate, and then she would take my tape, she would put an earphone on, and she would do that the whole of the chemotherapy. Now, the rationale here is when her mind is not stressed, she is actually more open. Her body is more open to the benefits that come from the chemotherapy, right? So on one of the visits to the doctor, she was saying to the doctor, this is what she's been doing. The doctor said, all her tumor markers have dropped. Her tumor in the brain has shrunk. There is so little cancer cell left. He's like, if I was a Christian, I'll probably say it's a miracle. But anyway, she told the doctor what she's doing, what we're doing. And the doctor said, whatever you're doing, continue to do it. Because he couldn't believe that all the tumors have shrunk, right? So that's what she's doing. Now, this helps her, all this insight that she had about her impermanence, about impermanence in nature, help her to see, right, that the ontological situation of reality is impermanent. Right? That also the individual, we are impermanent. So she's able to relate the trees to her hair to the trees. You notice nothing about Buddha, right? Because I'm very mindful. She's a very staunch Catholic. Now, she had to give a talk. I invited her to give a talk to the Cancer Council, And somebody asked her, there's always be one of them, They said, how can you let Jesus and the Buddha work with you? Right? And I was very concerned. What an audacious question, right? And you know what Teresa said? My doctor take care of my body. My priest take care of my soul. And the Buddha, my mind. I have no problems. Do you? She got a standing ovation. She not only regained her health, she gained a sense of humor. She's gained her courage. Okay? Now, spoiler alert. Teresa recovered from all her cancers. All. Okay? Now, interestingly, her priest developed cancer in a few years' time and asked Teresa to teach him the practice that she's been doing. Isn't this the workings of karma?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, what I find interesting is this postscript. So one day there was a woman in my building. We are in a medical center. She said to me that she met Therese in a Sunday market. Therese and her husband runs cafe there. And I don't know what happened, but in the conversation, it transpired that both of them knew me because this woman was in my building. So Therese told her about what I did with her, and also told her that I not only help her with her cancer, I gave her a meditative approach to life. And then she gave me a note. Therese gave this girl a note to give to me. I don't think you can see it, but it's just a little note on her coffee shop receipt, right? And it says here, she got a real name here. You helped me with cancer 20 years ago. A big thank you. Still meditating. I tell you, and like Kate, I had goosebumps when I read the note. Therese is still alive and well after 20 years, right? And I was delighted to learn that the husband that she was concerned about, is still there. They opened these cafes. The children that she was worried about are now grown up, married, and she's a grandmother of 3 grandchildren. And that she still meditates. And she said every day she hand out a number of free coffees. It's a gesture of deep appreciation and gratitude. Right? Now, I tell this because, we worry about, like you said, cultural appropriateness, religious thing, right? She cannot get more Catholic than that. Her priest wants a guarantee, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying, and again, I stress, it is the facilitator, the therapist, the teacher that has to be grounded, has to be quite skillful, have to be mindful and find ways to introduce that. But once Therese has got all the experience of the trees, she doesn't mind. She told the priest, I'm doing Buddhist meditation, we should learn too. She teach her children's classes Buddhist meditation. This is a staunch Catholic.
Yeah. I mean, the APA journal issue, the double issue that you co-edited, actually gets into very nuanced, very detailed understanding of some Buddhist terminology and discusses and compares how mindfulness is understood in Theravada Zen versus in the secular tradition in Western Buddhist modernism. And also you have a bunch of suggestions for re-envisioning, enriching mindfulness.
Yes. So one of the big debates is this difference in understanding of the term mindfulness. In fact, mindfulness has been used so loosely now, there's almost no meaning to it. You got mindful cushion, mindful biscuits, mindful curries. But apart from all that, right, in the contemporary setting, mindfulness is understood more in terms of, I think I would say, 3 components, which is present attention, right? Present centeredness, right? Being in the moment, attention regulation, things like that. Okay. Now, the classical traditional Buddhist text, especially from the main school of Buddhism, which is Theravada, right, has a different definition of mindfulness. It comes from the word sati, which comes from the Sanskrit word smrti, which means to remember, to recollect. So in the Buddhist text and the traditional text, mindfulness is related to remembering, recollecting, and clear comprehension. Now, what does that mean? Not just remembering memories, but actually to recollect the Buddha's teachings, to remember, and more importantly, to be clearly comprehensive, develop the wisdom to understand what is skillful and non-skillful action, what is skillful and non-skillful thoughts, and to apply them to the current situation. So you would ask yourself, what's the most skillful action I can do in this situation? What are the most skillful thoughts and speech? So it is not just about centering yourself. It is actually to move forward and find out so the Buddha talks about right mindfulness, right action, and all that. So this is what right mindfulness is. You've got to be aware of what is right given the situation. Now, the danger of not understanding this kind of traditional definition, and I've seen this a lot, is that whilst the mindfulness practice is in the contemporary setting is helpful, it can become very idiosyncratic, very self-focusing. My pain, my depression, my sadness, my anxiety, my, the personal pronoun.
Individualistic.
That's right. So that's why I said the misunderstanding is not only concerning, it actually makes a difference to the whole approach that people take. Like with Therese, right? She understands the trees and all that kind of thing. And now she's applying by giving coffees away and things like that. That's because she doesn't personalize my cancer, my tumor, my this, my that. Right? And this is what the Buddha is talking. This is what mindfulness in the traditional practice is. Right? Skillful action, clear comprehension. Therese clearly comprehend that impermanent change is natural and inevitable. Right? That is missing from the current definition of mindfulness. Plus, the current practice of mindfulness in contemporary setting doesn't have the supportive practice of dana, which is generosity, sila, which is ethics. Right? So the three pillars, as you know, is dana, generosity, sila, ethics, and bhavana, which is deep concentration and discipline. The bhavana part consists of right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness. Right? Now, what is being applied in current applications? None of the above.
Right.
Mindfulness. Not even right mindfulness. All of us are mindful, Alex, right? Kate, if I'm not mindful, I cross the road, the car will run into me. Right? So if you're not aware, you won't be talking about it because you'll be dead. So the Buddha emphasizes right mindfulness, skillfulness, not about good or bad, judging what is good or bad or evil and all that. But skillful means what is appropriate, what frees the mind from remorse. Right? So in my therapy work, I say to my clients, at the end of therapy, when you're finishing therapy, you have to select a list of charity work that you have to engage in. Mm-hmm. That's part of my therapy. Mm-hmm. Right? So some of them comes up with working with homeless people, orphanage, children, whatever. Right? The rationale being that if they were to actually help other people, they can see, and this is what the Buddha says, there is suffering rather than I am suffering. Right? Again, we can put in this idea of dukkha, suffering, universal suffering, without talking about suffering. So that is to get my clients out of their personal pronoun. My pain,
Yeah. So then one of the big points you're making in the issue is that a fuller understanding of mindfulness as in its original context can be much more transformative, much more healing and corrective misperceptions about, such as like an intrusive approach, one person curing the other as opposed to unblocking a process of flourishing.
That's right. Absolutely.
But also a much more connected, a whole society, all beings approach rather than one person's, I feel I'm too stressed out. What can I do? it appears that it's been perhaps expanding with the addition of compassion.
Yeah, I'm probably not being very politically correct here, Alex. I am not a big fan of mindful self-compassion. I think that when you're compassionate, it includes yourself. But I would never divorce self and others, right? Why do we have self-compassion and other You notice if you listen to the Dalai Lama's talks and all that, he talks about compassion, full stop, right? He does include occasionally self-compassion, but self-compassion is not a big topic in the Buddhist teaching. It's about compassion, right? Metta, loving kindness, right? So how do we get, if I am compassionate to others, I include myself in the other. And this is what Heidegger said, that we often see the other as me separate from them. He says the other includes me because I am also Dick, Tom, and Harry, right? So this is the idea that Heidegger borrows from Buddhist psychology, the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness.
Thank you so much for the stimulating conversation. And if people want to follow your work or interact more with you, where can they go? How should they look you up?
You can put my website, www.belindacong.com. Then I also have my work published in Academia EDU and ResearchGate. And I'm happy for people to contact me if they want to write to me for any articles or things like that I can share without copyright issue, right? Mm-hmm. Additionally, there is plans to turn the special issue into a book.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, that's but I'm hoping, because a lot of people have asked to use it as a course book.
Wow.
For their mindfulness programs, for, the organization. So I'm very happy about that because, I think I'm hoping to be a primer so that people will read the foundation of the practice, right? I've also been asked to write a book on this kind of approach to psychotherapy and also writes about the Buddha's teachings to children.
Well, we will share everything that exists as of now. We will make sure it's on our show notes page for our listeners. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit subscribe, leave us a great rating or review, and spread the word. You can also go to noblemindpodcast.com to join our email list. You'll get a weekly behind-the-scenes message, news, announcements, and other special goodies we come up with just for you. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.